Good afternoon, everybody. A warm welcome to all Ayurveda, Siddha, and Unani doctors to this webinar on telemedicine guidelines provided by the Central Council of Indian Medicine. Today, we have on our panel Dr. Shivaram Varamballi from NIMHANS. He is MD Psychiatry, Professor of Psychiatry and Head of the Department, Integrative Medicine Department. And his department has faculty from Ayurveda, Yoga and Modern Psychiatry, as well as scientists from these backgrounds. A warm welcome, Dr. Shivaram Varamballi.
Thank you.
To this webinar. And we have on our panel Dr. Professor Badahiramat, Suresh Badamat. He is MD and DNB from NIMHANS Bangalore. He is designated as Professor and Head of Telemedicine Center, Head of Forensic Psychiatry Services, and Consultant Community Psychiatry. He is affiliated to the Department of Psychiatry at NIMHANS Bangalore. He is visiting faculty to National Law School Bangalore, State Human Rights Commission, and Karnataka Judicial Academy. He is the President-elect to the Telemedicine Society of Karnataka. A warm welcome, Dr. Suresh Badamat.
Hi, everyone.
And we have on our panel Dr. Sanjay Sharma. He's completed his master's in general surgery and pursued his further studies in podiatric surgery in India and US. He is also an alumnus of the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, and University of California in Berkeley. He has also completed his PhD in Ayurveda from University of Pune. He is the founder of Apta Food Secure, co-founder of Yostra Labs Private Limited. He has contributed to several patents in telemedicine, diabetic food and wound care domains. A few of his inventions are in the market today. He believes in protocol-based national system of medicine, which is integrative by having best of all systems of medicine for the good of the mankind. He was the treasurer and joint secretary of Telemedicine Society of India and presently the secretary of Telemedicine Society Karnataka. Dr. Sharma is one of the few podiatric surgeons practicing in India, and his main field of work is diabetic foot conditions. Now, Dr. Sanjay will present the guidelines for telemedicine for practitioners in Ayurveda, Unani, and Siddha systems. Dr. Sanjay, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Prashant. Thank you, Dr. Suresh and Dr. Shivaram for being here. So each one of us know we have been practicing telemedicine somehow or the other for ages. If you're consulting, if you're giving some advice over a phone to your relatives, to your friends, that's telemedicine. If you're somewhere sending a WhatsApp prescription to a friend or a patient of yours, that is telemedicine. So this has been being practiced, but we didn't have a clear guidelines or a clear regulation or rules or guidelines from the government of India till date. Many of the countries like US and UK came up with these guidelines much earlier, probably about 5-6 years before. But in India, from the Telemedicine Society of India, we have been kind of advocating for the guidelines for practicing telemedicine since about 15 years. And today it has been fruitful. In March 2020, thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare came up with the guidelines for practice of telemedicine for registered medical practitioners vis-a-vis the allopathic doctors. On the cue of the same, the Central Council of Indian Medicine came up with the telemedicine practice guidelines for Ayurveda, Siddha, and Unani practitioners in India. So today we are going to discuss about what are these guidelines, what are the do's and don'ts, how do you practice telemedicine in your own clinics, in your own hospitals based on these guidelines. Post this a short presentation that we will have a panel discussion where we can ask n number of questions that you have in terms of the guidelines or how can you implement telemedicine. So this was by the Central Council of Indian Medicine. This guidelines was published in April, and this whole deck or the presentation was initially created by Dr. Suresh Badamat, who is with us as the panel, as one of the panelists, and we kind of adopted this presentation to the ASU doctors today. Please note the discussions generated during the presentation are academic only. They are not the law themselves, or not substitutes for professional legal opinion. For legal opinion, please contact an advocate that you know. These guidelines are already available on the CCIM website, and the guidelines for the modern medicine doctors are also available on the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare website, so which is already mentioned here. So what are the rules? What are the regulations? What are the acts that, that rule our practice? And in India, the practice of Ayurveda, Siddha, and Unani medicine is mainly governed by the concerned state acts, along with the IMCC Act of 1970, Practitioner of Indian Medicine, Standards of Professional Conduct, Adequate Code of Ethics, Regulations 1982, Drug and Cosmetics Act 1940, Clinical Establishments Act 2012, Information Technology governed by IT Act 2000, and the Information Technology Security Practices Act or Rules 2011. Please note that all this govern our practice. So whatever the practice that we are doing, either the telemedicine or in-person practice, is kind of governed by this, and probably we need to read them whenever we have the time. The guidelines that we are discussing today are meant for Ayurveda, Siddha, and Unani RMPs who are registered under the IMCC Act 1970. These guidelines have been prepared in partnership with Niti Aayog and adopted from the MCI in suppression of the Board of Governors under the IMC Act 1956. The guidelines constitutes Practitioner of Indian Medicine, Standards of Professional Conduct, Adequate Code of Ethics, Regulations Act 1982. So do this guidelines discusses comprehensively about the telemedicine setup in India? Yes. These guidelines doesn't talk about hardware or software, in the sense it doesn't talk about should you use a phone or a computer, or what kind of a phone should you use, or what kind of a computer should we use. That is not discussed here. The data management systems involved are not discussed here. Digital technology to conduct surgical or invasive procedures remotely, they are not discussed and they are prohibited. They're not a part of these guidelines. Other aspects of telehealth, such as research or evaluation, continuing education of the healthcare workers, they are not discussed here. This doesn't pertain to that education part of it. Does not provide for consultations outside the jurisdiction of India. Like if you have a patient sitting in US and they want to consult you over here via telemedicine, this guidelines excludes that. So this doesn't talk anything about consultation abroad. Panchakarma procedures like Vamana, Virechana, Basti, Raktamokshan, or similar procedures in Siddha or Unani, including cupping therapy, is not a part of this guideline. So who can provide telemedicine? As we discussed here earlier, an ASU RMP is defined as a person who is enrolled in the State Medical Register of Indian Medicine or Central Register of Indian Medicine under the IMCC Act 1920. A is for an Ayurveda practitioner, S is a Siddha practitioner, and U is a Unani practitioner. So the prerequisite for an ASU RMP is the same professional and ethical norms, standards as applicable to traditional in-person consultation. For example, whatever is a prerequisite for you to practice for an in-person consultation that you're practicing in your own clinic or in your hospital stands the same here also for the teleconsultations. Please note there would be an online courses that would be made available by the government in future, and you guys will have to complete this course within a period of 3 years. Right now, this course is not available. It will be, TSI is working with the ministry to come up with this course, and it should be available in a short while. These qualifying courses will be prescribed later on, and you should complete it within 3 years. In the interim period, follow these guidelines. And that is why we are conducting this awareness camps from awareness course from the TSI and NIMHANS together to ensure that you know what the guidelines are, and so that you can start practicing, especially in this period of lockdown and going further also. As said earlier, 3 important points to keep in mind. Same professional and ethical norms as an in-person consultation, real face-to-face consultation. The ethics and the professional etiquette doesn't change. Same laws and rules are applicable to a traditional in-person consultation as for the telemedicine. Just follow the telemedicine practice guidelines for Ayurveda, Siddha and Unani practitioners that was published in April 2020. And ASU RMP is entitled to provide telemedicine consultations to patients from any part of India. Also, please note that you refer to the State Council guidelines from where the patient is consulting with respect to the prescription generation. Each state has its own guidelines on what can an ASU doctor can prescribe or cannot prescribe. So it depends upon not where you are practicing in. Like, for example, if you're practicing in Karnataka and you're writing a prescription to someone sitting in Maharashtra, the state laws of Maharashtra applies, but not the state laws of Karnataka. So please keep that in mind. The guiding principles of telemedicine. Please note, at any point of time, the patient has the right to discontinue the teleconsultation, and you also have the right to discontinue the teleconsultation. The telemedicine consultations will be treated similar to traditional in-person consultations with regard to the ethics and law. The professional judgment of an ASU RMP shall be the guiding principle for all telemedicine consultation. The ASU RMP can choose not to proceed with teleconsultations at any time or stage. It is to the professional judgment of the ASU RMP whether he wants to continue with the teleconsultation or he would want to abort it then and call the patient for an in-person consultation. Has the discretion also on the mode. Each mode of teleconsultations has various advantages and disadvantages. We can discuss about it in the next. It could be a text consultation, audio consultation. It could be via images, video, or digital consultation. So the RMP has the discretion to decide what kind of a consultation would be best for him on each case-to-case basis. Can either party be anonymous in the mode of during the consultation? No, that would be illegal. The telemedicine consultation should not be anonymous. Both patient and the ASU RMP need to know each other's identity. And ASU RMP should verify and confirms patient identity, like with a registered ID, age proof. It could be, there are various forms, ways and means to confirm an identity of the patient, and you can do that. And each form of teleconsultation has a different challenges in terms of identifying the patient, and we can address that when we get into the detailed part of it. Every ASU RMP shall display their name and registration number in all its communication with the patients. So if you're writing an email, it should have your name and registration number. If you're writing the text WhatsApp message, it should have your name and registration number. Or if you're creating a prescription, signing it, taking a photograph of it, it should also have your name and registration number. So what are the different modes of teleconsultation? You can do a teleconsultation via text. That could be WhatsApp messages or any other text interface that we can have. It could be images. People can email you the images. People can send you images through various platforms that has been there. It could be audio. It could be a simple talk over a phone where you can do a teleconsultations. It could be video consults like what we are doing, the Zoom consult, or it could be a simple WhatsApp video or a FaceTime video that would be there. It could also be digital data connected with the devices. There are various platforms where an ECG machine or a stethoscope or a pulse oximeter are connected with the platforms, and probably I sitting at the remote end here can look at those digital data that is coming through these devices. It can be a mix. It can be a mix of video and images. It can be a mix of audio and images that is coming through. Any platform as per the ASU's RMP's requirement and convenience. As I said, if you would want to see a picture of a lesion, or if there is a skin disease and if you would want to look at a picture of it, you can always ask for the images, or you can say, no, I would want a video consultation where I can see it live. If you want to talk to the patient, you can say, I need an audio consultation. So it is completely depending on the RMP, on which platform he is comfortable with, he can choose that platform. There is no restrictions on the platform by these guidelines. No social media have been prohibited. He can also do a consultation via Facebook chat or a Twitter chat or an Instagram chat. As I said, the RMP would decide whether this is appropriate or not appropriate. So the teleconsultation process can be various: patient to the RMP, caregiver to the RMP. So there might be caregivers, like a parent is a caregiver for a minor child. There can be psychiatric patients who needs a caregiver to interact with the doctor. So there can also be, the next one is the ASU RMP to ASU RMP, or a specialist, or a health worker to an ASU RMP. So these are the various forms of teleconsults that can happen. And also there is a concept of you could have a first consult or a follow-up consult. If there is a new patient or a patient who is coming in after a long time, it could be a first consult. And if it's a follow-up consult where you're treating your chronic conditions, it could generally be a follow-up consult. As I said, once again, ASU RMP has a discretion to decide the mode of consultation. So let's look at how does the consultations happens. Typically, say a patient initiates a consultation. So if the patient initiates a consultation, the consent is implied, in the sense the patient has consented for a telemedicine consultation if he has initiated a consultation himself. So the patient can initiate a consultation through a text, audio, or video. After that, the patient initiates a consultation, the RMP will have to ensure the patient identification. So the patient will have to tell the name, age, and the basic demographics. If you're in doubt about it, you can seek for any government approved identification to be shown to you or to be sent to you. Or if you're satisfied, if the RMP is satisfied by the identification that the patient has done, then he can go ahead. Next is quickly assess if this call is an emergency or it is not an emergency. If it is an emergency, just advise first aid and refer as appropriate immediately. If it is not an emergency, you further go ahead with the assessment that you need to do over the phone. The detailed evaluation would be as per the professional discretion. A physical examination in person by another ASU RMP can be done. Ask for investigations and pause the teleconsultation if you think you need further investigations. If they do not have the records of the investigations right then and there, you can pause the teleconsultation, ask for the investigations, ask them to show it to you, send it across to you. If information is incomplete, shall recommend an in-person consultation or a repeat teleconsult with adequate information. Please note, all records, patient records needs to be maintained in terms of if they have sent you a lab report or an imaging report or any of those documents, you'll have to maintain all those records. If you have generated a prescription, you will have to maintain all those records. So when should the doctor take an explicit consent? So we discussed earlier that if a patient initiates a telemedicine consult, it is implicit consent. So it is thought that the patient has already been consenting, and that is why he generated the teleconsult. But if we have to seek for an explicit consult, you need to seek a consult, especially if the caregiver initiates a telemedicine consultation. Like if somebody else has initiated a consultation on behalf of someone else, then you need to ensure that there is a consent by the patient for a caregiver consultation. And if you want to record any of those consultations, like if you want to record a video consultation, if you want to record an audio consultation, an explicit consent should be taken from the patient for those things. The patient can state his or her intent by the phone. Like, how do you take a consent? Is they can say yes over the phone. They can say yes over the video call. They can say yes over the email, and you will have to log it. So we'll come for the record maintenance going further, but you will have to log that you have taken a consent by which method for an explicit consent. What to do? A patient has called me and it's an emergency consultation. The ASU RMP should exercise their professional judgment, similar to what you have done if they have come in for a in-person face-to-face consultation, to decide whether the telemedicine consultation is appropriate in a given situation or an in-person consultation is needed in the interest of the patient. In an emergency situation, advise first aid, do some counseling and facilitate a referral. In all cases of emergency, the patient must be advised for an in-person interaction with an ASU RMP or an RMP or a specialist at the earliest. A first consult, we talked about a first consult and a follow-up consult. A first consult means a patient is consulting with the ASU RMP for the first time or earlier, but more than 6 months has elapsed since the previous consultation. Like, for example, if he has consulted you in September 2019, and if he's coming back again to consult with you now, then this would be a new consult or a first consult. Or if he has consulted earlier in January for fever and now he comes in and consults for diarrhea, then it's a different health condition that becomes a new consult or a first consult. Last but not the least, if he has consulted you earlier but you don't remember anything of that, then also this becomes a first consult. Again, as we discussed, you need to take care of the following. The patient initiates the call, the patient is identified, and then assess if it is an emergency or not an emergency and go ahead with assessment. What can you do in a first consult? You can provide health education, you can provide counseling, you can provide medication. Medication, you cannot provide any Vishadravyas and narcotic and psychotropic substances. You cannot prescribe any of them, but the other regular medications can be prescribed. Follow-up consultations means a patient is consulting with an ASU RMP within 6 months of a previous or in-person consultations. Like, he has consulted in January and is again consulting in April. And you remember that he has consulted you in January. So this becomes a follow-up consultation. If there is a new symptom that are not in the spectrum of the same health condition, like I said earlier, if it is for a fever earlier and now it is for diarrhea, it becomes a new consultation. It is not considered as a follow-up consultation. If the ASU RMP does not recall the context of the previous treatment, then it's also not considered as a follow-up. It's considered as the first consultation. Again, the same process in terms of how the consultation happens in a follow-up consultation. What is the follow-up consultation? You can do health education, you can do counseling, you can refill the medications. You have prescribed some medications earlier. You just have to ask them to continue the medications, then just refill the medications. If there is a new complaint that he says, which is not related to the previous condition, then you initiate a new consult or you document that as a new consult. Can a caregiver initiate a teleconsultation? Yes. A caregiver is a family member or any person authorized with the patient to represent. Both the patient and the caregiver needs to be present during the teleconsult. If only the caregiver is present, then the patient is to be minor, the patient is to be incapacitated. A formal authorization letter might be required from the patient and verified by the patient in the previous in-person consult with explicit consent and verified document to establish the relationship. Any of these would be required if only caregiver is initiating the teleconsult. But if both the patient and the caregiver are together there in the teleconsult, then these documentation may not be required. Can a health worker like an ASHA worker or any of the other, your nurse or a pharmacist or anyone initiate a teleconsult? Yes, they can initiate a teleconsult, but they need to have a consent or an informed consent taken before initiating a teleconsult. and the health worker needs to establish the identity of the patient before establishing a teleconsult. Can an ASU RMP initiate a teleconsult with another ASU RMP or an RMP or a specialist? Yes. So if you have a patient and you would want to initiate a teleconsult with a specialist, like for example, an orthopedic surgeon, or if you want to initiate a teleconsultation with an internal medicine doctor, you can always initiate an ASU RMP to an RMP or a specialist. You can also initiate a consultation between an ASU RMP and an ASU RMP, and an Ayurveda doctor with a Siddha doctor, an Ayurveda doctor with an Unani doctor, or an Ayurveda and an Ayurveda doctor. You can initiate a teleconsult when the patient is there. Such consultation can be initiated by the professional judgment of the ASU doctor. Please note that if you're initiating a consultation with another ASU RMP or a specialist, please take the patient's consent before proceeding. The treating ASU RMP shall be responsible for the treatment and the other clinical responsibilities, like under whom the prescription goes to the patient. They would be responsible for the treatment and all other clinical responsibilities. Can an ASU prescribe any medicine on the teleconsultation? Yes. The ASU RMP has been empowered to prescribe medicine online. It entitles the same professional accountability as in traditional in-person consult. If the medical condition requires particular protocol or SOPs needs to be followed, it has to be followed. May prescribe medicines via telemedicine only when the ASU RMP is satisfied that he or she has gathered adequate and relevant information about the patient medical condition. Prescribed medicine needs to be in the best interest of the patient. An ASU RMP needs to follow the guidelines of the prescription and should not prescribe any Vishadravyas and narcotic or psychotic drugs. Panchakarma procedures like Vamana, Virechana, Basti, Rakta Mokshana are excluded in this guideline. So we would recommend that you don't prescribe those procedures over the telemedicine. Prescription guidelines. What can you prescribe? As we discussed earlier, many of have tailor-made formulations. You make medicines on your own in your clinic, or you take it from different sources and dispense it to your patients. This is common. So it is if you're prescribing something for your patients, or if you're prescribing something and sending those medicines through various means, through courier or post to your patients, ensure that the ingredients of the medicines are listed. So do not just randomly prescribe medicines where the ingredients are not listed. Also, please note the manufacturing and right to prescribe medicines are governed by the state acts, and it varies from state to state. Please look at the state acts of where the patient is residing before prescribing the medicines. Ensure prescribing medicines without an appropriate diagnosis or a provisional diagnosis will amount to professional misconduct. On your prescriptions, there needs to be always a provisional diagnosis or a diagnosis that needs to be mentioned, and follow the teleconsultation guidelines when you're prescribing medicines. How to send the prescription and a format of it. As per the regulations, a photo, scan, or a digital copy of a signed prescription or an e-prescription to the patient via email or any messaging platform can be sent. You can WhatsApp your prescription to your patient. You can send a digital copy to him. If you're using any of the e-consultation or a telemedicine platforms, a digital copy should be fine. And if you're transmitting the prescription directly to the pharmacy, you need to have an explicit consent from the patient that the prescription will be sent to the pharmacy, and the pharmacy will be supplying the medicines or dispensing the medicines to you. The categories of medicines that can be prescribed via teleconsultation, as of now, it is mentioned that except Vishadravyas and the narcotic and psychotropic substances, anything else can be prescribed. But you need to keep aware of the new guidelines or the amendments that can keep coming in, and also the state guidelines which have been there in your state or the state in which the patient is residing. What constitutes the misconduct during teleconsultation? As per the Indian Medicine Standards Act and RMPs insisting on telemedicine is a misconduct. If the patient wants to do an in-person consultation, and if you are saying that, no, I would want to do telemedicine, that constitutes a misconduct. RMP is misusing patient images and data. For example, if you are using the patient images that you have received, or a video consult images and publishing it in other forums, other groups, that would be a misconduct. Who use telemedicine to prescribe prohibited medications. So if you're prescribing narcotic via telemedicine, that is a misconduct. And soliciting patients for telemedicine through any advertisements, it can be on Facebook or Twitter or anything, soliciting patients is a misconduct. And the penalties for these is as per the CCIM Act and the prevailing laws. So what records to be kept during a teleconsultation? Like we have been talking about, you need to maintain this, maintain that, what records and how it needs to be kept. Log or a record of telemedicine interaction, a phone log or email record, chat, text record. You can just have a small book as of now, write down the log of the records. Like for example, this patient had called me at this point of time, and this was the discussions that happened, and this is the prescription that I generated. So a simple log should be good enough to begin with. Patient records, reports, documents, images, diagnostics data, digital or non-digital, needs to be retained by the RMP. The RMP should also maintain a copy of the prescription as medical records as required by the in-person consultations. What about the confidentiality? The ASU RMP shall abide by the practice of Indian Medicine Standards of Professional Conduct Etiquette Act of 1982, and with the relevant provisions of the IT data protection, all these regulations that we discussed earlier. The ASU RMP should ensure that the reasonable degree of care undertaken during hiring such services. Like if you're hiring an app, if you're getting an app for the teleconsult, you need to ensure that they maintain the privacy laws. Can we charge a fee for teleconsultation? Of course. You just treat it as an in-person consultations. If you're charging a fee for an in-person consultation, you can charge a fee for telemedicine consultation. So just treat it as it is, charge an appropriate fee, and ensure that you give a receipt or an invoice for the fee charged in providing the telemedicine consultation. Also, one thing I've missed out, I'm just going back in terms of the prescription. Please ensure that all your prescriptions post the teleconsultation has a line. It says that this prescription has been generated after a teleconsultation. So this will differentiate the prescriptions between an in-person consult. So we were, I think we got disconnected in between. We were talking about the platforms. So the AI, the artificial intelligence and the machine learning platforms are prohibited for consulting. So you cannot enable a consult with an artificial intelligence or a machine learning. The online platforms can be blacklisted if any of these are not being done. How to avoid medico-legal issues online? Identify the patient by the government authorized ID. Identify if it's an emergency patient and refer them. Please do diagnose or document the diagnosis and the provisional diagnosis before you prescribe. Follow the guidelines and the state council laws while prescribing. Please retain a copy of all the investigations and the prescriptions you have offered. Do not share patients' data with anyone. Legal issues will be similar to in-person consultations. The positive aspects of the whole thing is this has been the most patient-friendly, simple, and yet comprehensive telemedicine guidelines that we have ever seen across the globe. Professional clinical freedom has been given to the RMPs. It cuts across all available formats. This is not limited to one format or the other. All platforms can be used. It has been an amazing attempt has been made to reach the rural patients because they can use any platform or even just a voice call to get the access to the patients. access to the doctors. And it's a paradigm shift and a game changer in the healthcare industry. What it is silent about, and what probably there will be amendments that is coming in addressing all these. If the patient releases and video audio consult without the RMP's consult, like for example, it is said that the RMP cannot release any video audio to the public. But if the patient releases it to the public, what would happen? It is silent about it. Location of the complaint, where should the RMP or the patient raise a complaint is not discussed in here. Insurance for teleconsultation is not discussed here. Aggregators, data storage, or who owns the data, like does the aggregators like Practo or any of those platforms own the data, or the patients, that is kind of not addressed here. Online platforms, advertising doctors and rating of doctors that we see all over today is not addressed. And there have been some strenuous points between the Clinical Establishments Act and the telemedicine guidelines, and these have not been addressed. And we hope that this is the first draft or a first guideline that has come in, and there would surely be certain amendments that would come in, and these things would be addressed going further. So telemedicine today is an idea whose time has come. This is a solution for better care at home or at work. And I would like to end this saying that the telemedicine is here to stay, and it is time that all of you members, all of you people who have been working, seeing this, become the members of the Telemedicine Society of India. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. We are sorry for the technical glitches in between. Now we'll take up questions and on this issue. I think the first question is for you, Sanjay. Are these telemedicine guidelines limited to COVID-19 response lockdown periods, or it is for the continuous time periods? That is one of the questions.
This is for eternity. Thanks to COVID that we could come up, the government came up with this teleconsult guidelines in a very fast manner, but this telemedicine guidelines are for eternity. This is here to stay, and telemedicine is here to stay in India.
Okay. And what are the various means and platform technologies that we can use to provide telemedicine as per guidelines? So in the sense, can the doctors use WhatsApp kind of platforms for consultation? The WhatsApp video call can be utilized, or is there any restrictions on social media?
No, there is no restrictions on any of the platforms. As I said, it could be a simple phone call to a WhatsApp call, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or anybody's independent platforms that we see as M-Fine or Practo or any of those things. You can provide a teleconsultation.
Okay, that means to say even an audio call and a message can suffice.
Yes, but there is one thing that I think Suresh can add in here in terms of a prescription. A typical prescription on an SMS might not be adequate. Suresh, can you please highlight on how should the prescription be, and what platforms they can use to generate a prescription?
Some of the medication which are called as OC medications is over-the-counter medications. Those can be even called by a phone call and tell them, like Chyawanprash, all those things can be easily doable online, what we call it as over the phone call. But there are certain drugs which requires prescription, which cannot be sent either by a phone call or by a message. It needs to be either by a photo or a scan. So that's a very essential point. So I think it depends upon the each state, how they have said that this medicine, how it has to be mixed and how it has to be prepared. And what we call it as a medicine which is prepared in Kerala may not be the same as which is in Karnataka, especially with Ayush is considered. So if a doctor from Kerala is writing a prescription to a patient in Karnataka, so he has to keep that in mind. What does the state council here talks about and how he can prescribe. But however, at this point of time, let's be very clear on telemedicine platform. Sending a message based is slightly difficult. It has to be a signed copy. Better is a photograph on WhatsApp. Why not?
Okay, Suresh, one more question to you. How can we identify a patient? Should the doctor ask for a patient's ID proof, or verbal identification is enough in case the patient is already known to him?
See,
And
the first consultation when we are doing it, you have to have a ID. You have to, and see, the telemedicine guidelines is very clear, especially in the Ayush doctors. It clearly says that you have to identify the patient, and you also has to make yourself identify to the patients, telling that I am so and so, my registration number is this, and I am specializing in this area. So he has to identify. Without identification, you cannot do. That is in the new case. In the follow-up case, he has already seen you. Now you have to see is whether I'm talking to the same patient. So again, you have to ask for a valid ID. During this process, by chance, the Ayush doctor feels that, no, I can't identify him. Then the telemedicine consultation is withheld, paused. Again, he has to come in person, and then it will again start. So recognizing the patient is very, very essential on telemedicine.
how do the doctors identify themselves? They can put up their registration number or something in the background when they are making a video call, or they have to send something like a visiting card beforehand or something like that?
Yeah, Dr. Prashant, but this is again a very important question, because this telemedicine guideline is patient-centric, and you can use a platform like even a Zoom, WhatsApp. Of course, when you're sending a prescription, it has to be very clearly your registration number should be there, your address, your phone number, your contact details. Even if you have any like WhatsApp ID or even a Facebook ID, those things should be made available so that the patient can contact you. And also when I am like, suppose if I am in a Zoom, I would like to write Suresh Bhadat, but my registration number is this, my phone number is this. So that if it is there, so the patient also knows whom he is talking to. He is not somebody who is a person who is coming as a ghost. That should not happen. So it has to be identified. Both the parties should identify each other.
Okay. And how do the doctors maintain records? Like especially in the OPD setting, in a small clinic kind of a setup, how do doctors can store the data?
Yeah, Dr. Prashant, it is like this. If I'm sitting in an OPD now today, a patient comes here, just for a minute, we will forget that it is not telemedicine. If a patient comes here, I will open a slip, I will write his name, date, I will do some investigation, whatever history I will write, and then I will continue the medication, I'll give the prescription. Similarly in telemedicine, whenever a person comes, maybe even on WhatsApp video if I'm making, the same thing, whatever in-person consultation you are going to record, you will record apart from general physical examination. And now also you will mention, I got a phone call or a video call from this WhatsApp number, and he identified with this number. It may be Aadhaar number, PAN card, DL. You identify and record it. And when you send the prescription, the original will be with you. That has to be kept as a medical record.
Okay, right. This question is to Dr. Shiva. What medicines can we prescribe after we consult a patient over telemedicine consult? Over an audio video consult, is there any guideline on prescription?
Yeah, I think it is in the ASU guidelines, it is fairly clear that some procedures like the Panchakarma procedures and all those things are not allowed, and Vishadravya specifically they have mentioned that it is not allowed to be prescribed on the telemedicine, and narcotics, any narcotics which are not allowed. Of course, it is based on the judgment of the ASU practitioner. If he thinks that, for example, Dr. Suresh was talking about state boundaries. I know that in some states, the ASU doctors are allowed to prescribe some allopathy medicines, but that is not uniform across states. Maharashtra, I think, is a case in example. But a doctor in Maharashtra, if he is prescribing for somebody in Delhi, that may not work because in Delhi that is not allowed. So the doctor has to keep in mind where the patient is.
Okay.
Which state the patient is coming from. So here they have made it very clear that Vishadravyas and narcotics cannot be, and some procedures, other can be prescribed.
Basically, these laws are patient-centric.
Yes, yes.
Keeping in mind the safety of the patient.
Yes, yes.
And one more thing, many of the Ayurveda doctors, they are dispensing their own medicines or their own combinations of different herbs. Like, can they, after the consult, can they send these medicines across to patients via courier? Is there any restriction on that?
They have not specified that, but it is still, I mean, it happens all the time because the follow up, even now it is happening in various Ayush clinics that medicines are sent every month based on the need of the patient. So, but again, it has to be valid in that state where the patient is staying. Because otherwise, if you send something that is not allowed in that state and something goes wrong, we will be in the soup. So it is better to be aware of which state the patient is in, what is the rule there, but definitely you can send the medicine.
Okay, can we, like, this is a question to Dr. Sanjay. Can we share our availability on teleconsult on our social media platforms? In the sense, in my Facebook, can I share that I am available on this number, on WhatsApp or whatever?
So as any code of ethics says, you can publish your availability, you can publish your change of practice, or you can publish your higher education that you have done in your clinics or anywhere. And the same thing applies here also. You can publish your availability, but you cannot solicit patients. So there's two different things. It's a thin line being drawn. You can say that I'm available for teleconsults on this number. That's all. Please come and, please, call this number for teleconsultation may not be the right wordings to use. Okay, so it's a thin line, but you can surely state that you are available for teleconsultations. Suresh, you can add if there is anything.
I think one thing Suresh can add is like, is there any requirement for the doctor to, like, when he dispenses some medicines, to, like, give a printout of ingredients in that medicine and all those things to the patient when, in case the medicine is produced by him?
I think Suresh has to unmute. Be unmuted.
Yes. Somebody has to, Mahesh, you have to unmute Suresh.
Only Mahesh can do
Mahesh,
it.
can we unmute Suresh?
Yeah, right.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, basically, see, the question what you raised is advertisement cannot be done. Soliciting patient cannot be done. Of course, you can, the way you are giving phone number, it is unique for you. At the same time, if you're having a WhatsApp number or email, it's unique. That is allowed. But please do not solicit patient the way you're going to say, please come here, I'll be available, I'll give you guarantee 100%. Those kind of things should not be done. The way you put up, for example, simple example I can give you is, in front of your clinic, you're going to put up a board. This is the name of the clinic and this is my name. This is where I'm practicing. Similarly, it is basically providing information, not soliciting. So providing information versus soliciting, you should be very clear. It should not put up in Facebook telling that you come here, I'll be providing this kind of, that should be avoided.
Okay. One more thing I wanted to ask you, Suresh, was that is it necessary for the doctor to mention all the ingredients in the medicine he dispenses?
Yeah, this is very clear.
Yes.
If you are mixing the medicine, the Ayush guideline is very beautifully, they have written, whatever mixture you are using, it is allowed, but you have to disclose the ingredients to the patient. That's a very must. They have amazingly written that.
Okay. One more thing. This is also to Suresh. For example, if I refer a patient to some hospital over a teleconsult, and the patient does not go to the hospital in time, or if before he reaches to the hospital, some mishap happens, am I liable to whatever happens to the patient?
Dr. Prashant, it is similar to in-person consultation. Like suppose a patient has come to me and now I say you have to go to some Jaideva hospital in Karnataka, cardiology. On the way, something happens, he dies. I'm not held responsible. So similarly in telemedicine consultation also, if I say you have to go to one hospital A because you require in-person consultation, if the patient delays or something happens, you'll not be held responsible.
Okay. One more question to Shivram. Can the pharmacist dispense medicines based on e-prescriptions? In the sense, a doctor prescribes over WhatsApp or SMS. Can the pharmacist dispense these medicines? Is there any restrictions on them?
Yeah, it is based on the same rules as for the in-person consult. The pharmacist has a right to ask for the name of the doctor, the registration number of the doctor, and of course, based on the state rules, whether that is allowed in that particular state. Then, of course, the pharmacist. But like Dr. Suresh was saying, SMS or just a text message will not be enough. It will have to have the name of the doctor, the registration number of doctor, and a legible kind of prescription, which can be scanned or a photo taken and sent over WhatsApp. That's okay, but just a text message cannot be honored.
Okay. Can the doctor over the teleconsult prescribe some lab investigations and other tests like scanning or maybe something else, which he feels required? Can he?
Yes, I think definitely he can. It is just like a in-person consultation, but again you cannot really say that you get the testing done only in this laboratory or in that laboratory. That has to be left. Of course, the patient may ask what all laboratories do this. You can give a list of laboratories, but the final choice has to be that of the patient.
One more important thing is, can we take the verbal information on lab reports or imaging, etc., on the face value of the patient, whatever he says, like my sugar level is so much, my creatinine is this much?
I don't think we should do that, because we don't really do it in an in-person consultation either. We can't rely on somebody's memory. It's not that we don't trust the patient, but people's memories are difficult to, he may not remember it correctly, especially if he is not a medical or a paramedical person. It is unfair to do that.
But just as a debate, would want to say, if we are treating diabetes or treating hypertension and we need to change the medications or the dosage of the medications based on the somebody's screen sharing, can we disallow people to screen share? Mahesh, can we do something about this?
Checking,
Yeah.
sir, just a second.
I think somebody has mistakenly pressed share the screen.
So, and if we need to change the dosage based on the sugar levels or the BP levels, how do we do it via tele? Any thoughts?
Basically, you are asking a question whether we can change the medicine. That's what you're asking, Dr. Sanjay.
Prashant had a question in terms of can we rely upon the patient's word, saying that if the patient says that my blood sugar levels were 230 yesterday,
Okay.
and my HbA1c was 10, and we want to change the medications, can we rely upon the patient's words to change the medications? If we cannot, then how do we take this forward?
Yeah, so there are two issues. First and the foremost, basically, the Ayush doctor has all the discretion to rely or not to rely. If he is my old patient and he is an educated, and I know him, he consistently gives a good report, he knows how to do the testing. Yes, and he is my old patient and he's on telemedicine follow-up. That is very, very essential. Telemedicine follow-up, and I know the history very well. Yes, on telephone, it is allowed. But if you don't know and you are apprehensive about the patient's literacy and you don't know whether he is telling you're not able to trust the patient, don't go ahead with that. Every doctor has a set of patients. I have around 35 to 40% of my patients whom I know the history completely from their family, everybody I know. If they phone call, I can just prescribe over my phone. But remaining 60%, I cannot trust, or I don't trust my own memory. That time you should be careful. So definitely the telemedicine guidelines has not banned it. Yeah. But however, if you are taking any kind of blood report, the patient says that today's my blood report is 86. Please do document in the patient's records that I made a phone call or the patient made a phone call. On that day, patient reported the glucose level is 86 based on the patient report and did this changes in the medication. That has to be clearly documented because it is equivalent to in-person consultation, and even that phone call is chargeable now.
Here is the interesting question from one doctor. What happens if patients does not understand any instructions because of technical issues and not noted? How to defend ourselves from the legal issues?
Yeah, see, one of the important, I think some doctor has raised a very valid question. So whenever, see, this is the same thing, we are doing telemedicine since past 15 years in NIMHANS. Anytime when you are finishing the telemedicine consultation, please call, if they are on face-to-face over the video, I will ask him, do you have any problem, had any problem in connection? Can you rate 0 to 10? What was the quality of the audio and video? If you say, sir, it was very good, 10 out of 10, I'll close. No, sir, it was very bad. Can you tell me which part of did not understand? I will re-clarify and then I will go ahead.
Okay, there is one more question. Should the video or audio of the consultation be recorded? That is one more question. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, see, the separate consent. It should be explicit consent. The patient has given a consent to come on telemedicine consultation, not for audio video record. The record, what you're going to do is logs. What is that log? Today, Mr. Shivram called me at this time by this phone number. That is called as a log. If I'm doing a video consultation, so-and-so person did a video call on this time, this number, phone number, or maybe Skype number, or maybe WhatsApp number, or it may be any other Zoom. So that should be the log. If, see, note, the telemedicine has not banned it, but you take the consent, 1A. B, by chance, if you are taking a video of a patient to show it to Dr. Shivram or else to Dr. Sanjay, I want an opinion from my colleagues. When you are doing this, please take an explicit consent telling that I'm going to send it to Mr. Shivram and Sanjay. Please give me consent. A. B, better you take a consent which is irrevocable. That means by chance, Dr. Shivram sends it in a WhatsApp to many people. And the patient says, now I am withdrawing consent. He has all the right to withdraw consent at that time. So it should be, patient should know once it goes into social media, the doctor do not have anything to get it back. So that type of irrevocable consent has to be discussed, and patient signs, yes, you can record it. If he says no, you cannot record it.
Okay. What are the main precautions we need to take before starting a telemedicine practice? A broad perspective from your side, Suresh.
Yeah, see, according to me, it is almost like in-person consultation. Whatever the law and ethics which is applicable in person, same thing is applicable here. When you start telemedicine consultation for new patients, please do verify. That is very, very essential. Verification of the patient. If you're not sure about the verification, don't continue the telemedicine consultation. You have to have a reasonable degree of sure that this person whom I am talking to is his Aadhaar number or DL number, his name is this, his father's name is this, his age is this much. If you are able to identify, please go ahead. And that another important is don't write medicine which are prohibited. For example, they have written Vishadravya, that is basically poisonous medicines, and NDPS. You have to know what are those NDPS medicines. That is the drugs which have been listed under NDPS, Narcotics and Psychotropic Substance Act of 1985. It includes benzodiazepine like diazepam, lorazepam, phenobarbital. Those are the medicines have been clearly written there. Even cannabis has been written there. So don't prescribe those medicines on telemedicine. If you prescribe, it is a clear evidence of misconduct. So avoid those kind of misconduct. Whenever you feel that there is an emergency care is required, don't engage the patient. You do counseling and ask them to go for in-person consultation. So these are the some important tips to do this in telemedicine consultation.
Yeah, Ayurveda also, some of the cannabinoid products are used. So you have to be very careful when you prescribe them. On the telemedicine, you should not.
Okay. Dr. Shivram, I would like you to elaborate on your department's activity about Ayurveda and yoga, because many practitioners are here. They will be like illuminated about the activities of your department in NIMHANS.
NIMHANS basically has had a yoga center for a very long time, maybe last 12, 13 years, which means we have been providing clinical services of yoga. Based on some of the research that we did, and of course research done outside, NIMHANS took a decision in 2019 to have a new department of integrative medicine. So this department combines modern medicine or modern psychiatry and neurosciences along with Ayurveda and yoga. So we have assistant professor of Ayurveda, Dr. Kishore, assistant professor of yoga, Dr. Hemant Bhargav, and assistant professor of psychiatry, Dr. Bharat Holla. These are permanent faculty of this department. I am, of course, I am a professor of psychiatry. I am currently in charge, head of that department. And we have a lot of scientists from Ayurveda, yoga, and modern medicine also. We are going to start some courses, hopefully by next year, like a PhD in integrative medicine. We are going to start postdoctoral fellowships for both Ayurveda graduates as well as psychiatric graduates. We are planning to start a MD Manasaroga, which basically psychiatry and to some extent neurology in a near future. So this is what we are doing. And tele yoga, we have been providing some kind of a follow-up yoga consultations for quite a long time. We have not done it for first consultations because it is very difficult to teach yoga without having seen the person or taught some of the basics at least to the person. But follow-up, it's quite useful because we get, as NIMHANS, we get a lot of patients from very far away, some from abroad, some from Northeast, Kolkata and other places. So as a follow-up measure, telemedicine or tele-yoga in this case has been extremely useful to us. Patients have given very good feedback about it. So I think that is something that in the Ayurveda and the Siddha Unani, for follow-up, I think it would be very, very useful. I'm sure all of the doctors will have patients from very far away. So tele-consultation would be useful. I see it primarily as a follow-up. To some extent, if you know the person or you have, like Dr. Sanjay was pointing out in a slide, if you are a specialist within Ayurveda or within Siddha in a particular area, another ASU doctor may call you for a teleconsult. So you can help that person deal with this problem. I think I'm told that in Ayurveda also there are specialists who deal with, say, for example, oncology, cardiology. There are some specialists. So as a Ayurveda doctor, I'm a general physician. I call this person and I take a tele opinion from him. Those kind of things would be extremely useful. So this act, I think, is a good step in that direction.
Okay, there is a good question. I think Dr. Sanjay can answer this. How can we record vitals in a teleconsult? Is there any technological help regarding this?
So as we were discussing earlier, there are various platforms and devices today where you can record vitals remotely. We have digital stethoscope where the patient attendant or a health worker on the other side keep at different anatomical locations of the chest, and you can hear the heart sounds. There is an ECG machine, there would be a pulse oximetry, there would be a BP apparatus, which are all digitally synced. So if you take a blood pressure there, you can see it here. So those kind of platforms, those kind of technologies are already there in the market. But the guidelines, what the guideline says is, again, as Suresh was mentioning, these are all not a necessity for according to as per the guidelines. This is not like mandatory. These are all to the discretion of the RMP. If you think that this patient's blood pressure needs to be recorded using this digital devices, then you ask for it. If you think the patient can himself take a BP in his home, or his attendant can take a BP and let you know what it is completely up to the RMP's discretion on what devices to use, what devices to trust, what devices not to trust. Somebody, I saw also the question similarly, how can I trust the device? Similarly, as you trust it in your face-to-face consultation, you use an X device to check the BP in a face-to-face. And you trust the device. Similarly, on a teleconsult module, you trust the patient or a patient attendant taking the BP and the device that they're taking the BP. If you do not trust it, if you think they're doing it wrong, call for an in-person consultation or ask somebody else to go there and take the blood pressure or check the blood sugar. So consider all these consultations as an in-person consultation, and do whatever you used to do in an in-person consultation, do the same thing or use your common sense in the same way for a teleconsultation.
Okay.
There is one interesting question, I think, Prashant, for Dr. Sanjay. Somebody has asked a question, our own built app or software, is it permissible for telemedicine? I am also not aware of this. What is your opinion?
So as said, any platform is fine, but there are different guidelines for your own built app. So this telemedicine, as said, has excluded any platform, hardware or software kind of advices for this guideline. But there are other guidelines by Government of India, other standards, global standards are there when they are building an app and when they're building an electronic medical records or anything like that. So probably they have to refer to those guidelines and follow those global standards while developing an app.
I would also add to this, please see, when Niti Aayog did this telemedicine guideline, they deliberately did not enter into this aspect. See, we may come up with, as a doctor, we may come up with a different app, whether a patient can use it. So they want to use those applications which patient is easily usable. That is like WhatsApp. See, this telemedicine guideline should not be for urban centric. It should be even for rural. See, this telemedicine is, they want to reach rural patients. So what are those rural semi-urban patients can use? Don't bring an application or a hardware which the doctor doesn't know to use and the patient doesn't know to use. When we had a discussion, see, I was lucky to be part of it. My director from NIMANS, Professor B.N. Gangadhar sir, had given me the draft. We had discussed. They were very, very clear. Don't enter into this domain. Make it as easy as possible for the patients. We are not writing this telemedicine guideline for doctors. It is for patients. So keep it open. If the patient says, I'm happy with face talk either, or maybe WhatsApp, please use which the patient is able to use it. You have your own application which is free and the patient is very easy to use it. So telemedicine guidelines do not ban any kind of application. It does not even say it has to be HIPAA compliant, which is there in US. And under the coronavirus infection, they have said that don't even use HIPAA compliance because they are unable to reach patients, even in US, imagine. So in India, the Niti Aayog especially has very, very crystal clear, it has to reach rural patients. That is the basic agenda here. Hope I made my point very clear. So application is there, but use the application which patient can use it easily.
There is one question regarding the fees charged. What he asks is, fee charged for teleconsultation has some norms or purely based on doctor's will? One thing. And is there any restriction on follow-up charges? Would be same or not? And what are the legal threats we may expect from patients if they intend to, and how to deal with it?
So I think second question Suresh can take. Fees is completely to your discretion. If you in an in-person consultation, if you are charging 500, you can charge 500 for a teleconsult, or if you think you'll have to charge less, charge more. And there is no norms as per the guideline here that we are talking about on the fees at all. But in the KPME acts and other things, there is certain recommendations that has been given, which even in an in-person consultation is not being followed today. So, it is completely up to your discretion. Correct me if I'm wrong, Suresh. If it is in the KPME Act, it says 150 rupees per consultation is what is the recommended fee. But it is our thing is it is completely up to you, between you and the patient, on how much you can charge the patient for a teleconsult or a follow-up or a first consult. And the second question, you can take it, Suresh, on the legal aspect.
So the legal aspect, the question is, what are the legal liability, how to protect yourself. I think I've already answered. It's basically identify the patient, don't prescribe medicines which have not been, which have been prohibited, and also at the same time send the prescription, keep the copy of the prescription. So these are the things which you have to see. The whatever the legal case which can occur in person, it occurs here also. A. B. There have been research conducted where they try to see whether the legal issues are more in telemedicine versus legal issues more in person. Actually, the legal issues are more in person, but whereas in telemedicine, it gives a digital trail. Patient cannot say lie. And when you are sending the prescription, it is available online. And along with your normal recording, there is a digital record is there. So in that way, you are also safe, patient is also safe. So the legal issues they have been debating now, the telemedicine is safer for the patient, for the doctor actually in terms of recording and keeping the logs.
So does it come under KPME, Suresh? There has been multiple questions on the KPME and teleconsults.
Yeah, I see this is again one of the biggest problem we have asked for clarification. Suppose imagine a patient, a doctor who is sitting in Kerala and prescribes medicine for Karnataka patient. Does he come under KPMA Act? Is a big question because he is in Kerala. Same time, if a doctor is sitting in Karnataka and he is under KPMA or not, we don't know, but he is prescribing medicine for a patient in Tamil Nadu. So will he has to follow KPMA Act? No, sir, I am prescribing for Tamil Nadu patient. Why should KPMA Act should come here? So this is an issue which we don't know. And slowly the evolution of this guideline will come into picture. So that's a gray area at this point of time. So at this point of time, the coronavirus infection, please do help our patient. These things, whatever is happening, that can be clarified later. Please go ahead and help our patient. And clearly, even the guideline also says that during this intermediary period, please follow the guidelines.
Okay, does the teleconsultation come under consumer court? That is one question.
Yeah, of course, if you are going to charge, it will be a consumer court, whether we like it or not. If you are providing free services, your court will not attract.
Okay. Suresh, can you elaborate on the telemedicine course, online course for doctors? Because many people are interested to take up the course. I know the course is not ready, but can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, recently, Professor B.N. Gangadhar sir, that is director of NIMHANS, who is a MCI ethics committee member also for allopathy. He had written a letter to Niti Aayog chief sir, head, and there has been a discussion going on slowly. And also TSI is also may come up with Telemedicine Society of India is also in discussion to come up with the guideline. Basically, guideline in the sense the course curriculum, how long it has to be taken, and also is it how often, every 3 years or 5 years. The one thing they have immediately approved is year afterwards, maybe in another 6 months down the line, whoever is going for registration has to undergo this training. That means a new student who is going there. Again, this is Professor B.N. Gangadhar sir clearly said that it has to be done, and the Niti Aayog has accepted it. But this course has to be ratified within another few days. Most probably the TSI in conjunction with NIMHANS may come up with a course. It will not be more than 1 or 2 or 3 hours maximum. A. B. It may even be given to State Council to run the course. So the course may be videos, and then you have to answer some 10, 15, 20 questions, MCQs. If you're able to pass, you will be given a certificate and you'll be allowed to practice. So that's the way it is going to be, as easy as possible, not to create problem to either the doctor or to the patient.
Somebody
the
asked a
courses
question related to that course.
Supplementary, the courses will be for all practitioners, the ASU doctors, allopathic doctors, and everyone. So I think that answers the questions from Deepashri. Prashant, I think you should answer the question on Bhalataka.
Yes.
Where is the question? I'm not getting the question.
In the Ayurvedic prescription, we use Bhalataka. Is it a Visha, Semicarpus anacardium?
Yeah, it is. It comes under the Vishadravya classification. So it cannot be prescribed over the teleconsultation. Maybe later on when the patient comes in person and meets the doctor, if it is absolutely required for the condition of the patient, it can be prescribed only when patient meets you and you your discretion says that this is absolutely required, you can prescribe it, but not over teleconsultation.
I think somebody has asked a question putting my name there. In an organization, professional accountability is upon the doctor or the organization. I mean, the primary responsibility will be upon the doctor because you are doing the assessment and doing the prescription. Organization cannot take responsibility for the prescription of the doctor. Other issues related to how it is organized, those kind of things, yes, it can happen, but the prescription is the doctor's responsibility. Am I right, Dr. Suresh?
Yeah, so being from a legal background, I'll put it very simple. There are two issues, civil case and legal criminal case. In criminal case, it is the doctor will be held responsible, full stop. In civil case, it is vicarious liability. For example, if I have given a medicine to a patient and the patient, something happens and he dies. And if they're asking for a 3 crore rupees for compensation, and the court also knows Dr. Suresh cannot pay. So they will say 50 lakhs will be paid by the Suresh, remaining 2.5 crore will be paid by Nimans. Sorry to say Nimans. So the organization where I am working, and they will pay. So that is under civil liability. If there is a criminal case for killing that patient, I will be arrested. Nobody else in the organization will be arrested. So civil liability one, criminal liability. So vicarious liability is only for civil case, not for criminal case. So that is the organization. The reason behind in civil liability, the organization is made is because organization has hired me. If I'm incompetent and still they are hiring and they're giving me salary, that is the reason they are held responsible. Criminal case, the organization is not bothered. It says that he has done, you arrest him. So hope that I answered that question.
There is one more question, like how long we should store this data of the patients?
Yeah, would you like, sir, Prashant, but sir, I will ask the same question back to you. How long in-person consultation, how long you will be storing the inpatient or outpatient data, sir? Same thing is applicable here.
Same thing is applicable, yeah. I'm practicing since 22 years and I'm still holding the data from the first day.
So what is the guideline says, sir? It is 3 years or for 5 years, sir?
MCA says 5 years.
Prashant, sir?
I don't know within the Ayush fold.
How many years, sir, Prashant, sir? In Ayush?
I'm holding since the day I started my clinic, but I don't know any particular legal binding is there.
Okay, one more thing is these all videos on telemedicine consultation. It is available on YouTube. If you type my name, it will be available. So please do go and visit if you have any doubts. We will be uploading certain videos so that for your benefit, you can see anytime and learn. Prashant, but sir, go ahead.
I think Dr. Kishore has answered that question, says Ayush also same, it is the same 5-year duration.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kishore, for this answer.
Okay, is there one more question somebody has asked privately to me? After telemedicine, if doctor feels in-person consultation is required, then how to go? See, the guideline is very clear. Whenever you feel that the person requires in-person consultation, you will tell the patient directly, see, now you have to come in person to me or to any other doctor. The telemedicine will not help you at this point of time. You can decide anytime at any stage. That is the beauty of the telemedicine guideline. So you have all the right to say no for telemedicine consultation at any time. So that is the answer. And
they've also asked R&D activity permitted over telemedicine platforms, as clearly in the as per the guidelines. This is not for R&D activities or any other activities except a patient consultation. So let's not venture into something else. It will be called as a misconduct at this point of time. So as per the today's guidelines published in April 2020, R&D activities this guideline doesn't support it.
But if you do a research study saying that I am going to do it over telemedicine and you get the approval of the ethics committee.
Yeah, that is fine.
Yes.
That is fine, but not as a private practitioner.
Yes.
With all the research, protocols being followed, that is absolutely fine. That comes under the research activity, not under the telemedicine guideline.
Exactly.
So somebody asks, how can we know about the courses in the future? Please become a member of TSI. It is open for all the Ayush doctors, and then you will get to know firsthand when the courses would be available, and you will be able to do it in the first batch itself.
And one more thing I would like to add for yoga in mental illness, Dr. Shivram has formed all the guidelines available, which is available on the website. Shivram, would you like to say about the website?
Yeah, I'll put it on the, probably put it on chat here. So
I request all the participants to go through the website. What are the yoga requirements for what illness, like anxiety disorder? What are the yoga to be done for schizophrenia, for depression? Different yogas have been tested, and Shivram has been doing this, and many publications he has been able to do it.
So what we have done basically is that for the common mental illnesses, we have suggested a yoga module. It is not that it has to be followed down to the T. It is just a guideline. There are, of course, some patients who may not be able to do particular yogic practices, or you feel that they cannot do that. That's perfectly all right. But this is just a guideline. So after some research, we have arrived at that kind of a module, and we do not claim any, copyright on that. We are very happy to share it with people who are trained in yoga, who can teach it at their own level. So that is what we have been doing for the last maybe 7 to 10 years. It is available on that, which I have shared the website on the chat. I think Dr. Deepashree has asked how to enroll to TSI. Sanjay should answer.
I have put the website link there. Please go to the website, yes. Download the application form, pay the membership fee online, and send the application form, scan it and send it across. That should be good enough.
And somebody had asked for the videos in YouTube. Search my name, you will be able to get that, all the videos which are uploaded in about this telemedicine guideline, especially videos.
So I think anything else? I think
question to Suresh, like if a patient who is already known to the doctor, he stays abroad, can the doctor teleconsult him?
Yeah, I would rather say don't do it, because the telemedicine guideline says that outside the jurisdiction of India, it doesn't discuss. So that is one of the drawback of this guideline. So because not drawback, I would rather say Indian law is applicable in India. So they will be able to write a law within the jurisdiction of India. You cannot write a law if a patient is sitting in Germany. We cannot say that if Germany laws follows this. So they are very clear. They said that no. So avoid as much as possible for a patient who is in US or maybe in Germany anywhere.
I think it is the right time for our government to make medical acts for the whole country similar.
But unfortunately, Prashant sir, the problem is health is a state subject, not the central subject. That is, in Constitution, we have something called a state subject, central subject, and concurrent list. Mental health comes in concurrent list. Physical health comes in state. So the state will decide how. If you look at the way the amount of money invested in Kerala for health is huge. So they have a beautiful public health system. And next comes is Karnataka, then Maharashtra. So depending upon the various state, how much they are investing, it is a state subject. That is the biggest problem. Hope the day may come that the whole health can come under the single central. There has been a discussion on that, but unfortunately, it is a fight between center and state telling that we will not accept or not. So it has to be a constitutional amendment to bring it to the central subject.
Yeah. Are we done? Any other questions?
Yeah, we are done. We are done with the questions. Anything else to add, Dr. Shivram, from your side?
I think that's fine. Most of the things have been clarified.
Is there any activity?
There is a good question, Suresh. There are many health apps on diet, and exercise and other things that are coming up, does these apps also come under the telemedicine guidelines?
Yeah, so telemedicine is very clear. It is between the doctor and the patient, or the doctor and the healthcare provider, or the doctor and the what we call it as another doctor. So these apps are considered as they are not called as telemedicine; they are called as telehealth. Currently, the government is not regulating it. In US, they started regulating it. I think 3 or 4 apps have been approved by FDA in US. In a day or two, maybe in few months or few years down the line, in India, these apps also will be regulated over a period of time. But currently, the government under the Drugs and Cosmetic Act and rules, the app which is connected to a device is what they call it as they are going to monitor. But that is also same in FDA. But now the FDA has given 2 apps which are not connected to device, like ECG machine and there is a software, ECT machine and a software. So they are monitored under the Drugs and Cosmetic Acts, similar to FDA, but independent health app. Like I have an iPhone, my heart rate, the distance of walking, where I go, that health information is collected and it is going to the Western country. Tomorrow, there may be a law which may say Indian citizens' data regarding health will be stored in Indian server. It cannot go outside. If that law comes in, very good. Currently, the law as per the what we call it as IT Act, it is very clear. The servers, the data of the Indian people has to be in the Indian server, like cloud. The cloud has to have a physical server in India. So now all the companies are now opening up their servers in India because we do not want to have our data be stored in somewhere else. So the current government is very clear. I think 1 year back only this notification has come. So on that basis, tomorrow it may also be regulated. They are not considered telemedicine. They are called as telehealth. And for more legal, if there are more any legal question, there is something called as, if people are in and around Karnataka or in Bangalore, there is something called as postgraduate diploma in medical law ethics from National Law School. If you are interested, you would like to do this PGDMLE course is done there. I am a faculty teaching there in PGDMLE. Wish I could have taken a lot of legal questions, but if you are interested, you can do that course, which is open for anybody, whoever has done graduation, even a lawyer, even a nurse or healthcare worker who has finished his graduation can do this postgraduate diploma in medical law ethics. Similarly, Dr. Shivram is also running certain courses for Ayurveda. Can you highlight that, Shivram?
I mean, Ayurveda, we are not yet running it. We have to go through a lot of the statutory bodies to do it. What we are actually running is certificate courses for Ayush doctors and, of course, yoga professionals who are interested in yoga for mental disorders. So every year, 2 times we run a course. It is a one month full-fledged course where the person has to actually physically come here and stay here for a month. So what we do is we have some basic classes on psychiatric and neurological disorders, and then they join our yoga therapists in conducting the yoga sessions for those patients. So it requires some basic knowledge of yoga and ability to teach yoga. We cannot teach the basic yoga in that period. So we have been running it for the last 2 years. And this is exactly what, as you're saying, the idea is to reach as far as possible to the rural areas. So a lot of people came from different parts of India and have completed the certificate course. What yoga to teach for what mental disorders, what not to teach, which is also very important. And this course we are running, we were supposed to run the next course in June, but the COVID thing makes it unlikely. So the course has been postponed as of now to October. So all these are available on our website. You can please go and check it.
Is that we don't have any other questions? Prashant, should we end the session?
We don't have any questions. Yeah. There is only one question regarding is there any difference between telehealth and telemedicine?
Yeah, see.
Terminology.
See, telemedicine is a part of telehealth. Like Karnataka is part of India. Telemedicine is part of telehealth. Telehealth is very big. Telehealth is like any instrumentation technology used for healthcare. Like a ECG machine along with the software. That also comes under telehealth. Your mobile phone recording your heart rate, how many steps you walk, that is telehealth. Telemedicine is only when there is a interaction between the doctor and the patient. That becomes telemedicine. Like if you take CT scan machine and a software, that is telehealth again. So please do understand, telehealth is like a country or a world. A part in the world is telemedicine. So that is the difference basically. So telemedicine, if you look at the definition which has been taken in this guideline, is a WHO's guideline which says that use of instrumentation technology to minimize the gap between the doctor and the patient. So IT technology use, that is called as telehealth. So again, for telehealth, even what classes we are taking, tele-education comes under telehealth. If I'm doing some video on something, that is also telehealth. So these all comes as a telehealth. Telemedicine is very specific.
Didn't understand, somebody has written a question. Already government has provided the list of government officials which can be available for telemedicine. Can other doctors participate in? What is this? I don't know what they are talking about. Any idea of Sanjay?
No, probably, probably for the COVID, there has been a helpline for the people to contact the doctor.
I think that's what that lady is clarifying now.
Yeah. So,
COVID-19.
Yeah, for COVID-19. So I think there are various platforms. Probably, if you whoever is the person who has asked for it, there are multiple agencies providing back-end services for the COVID telemedicine. I'm a part of a couple of them. You can revert back. We can get you in touch with those groups, and you can talk to them directly.
And one more, just an information, there are various nowadays, because of the coronavirus, many of the associations, like maybe Indian Psychiatric Society is coming up with some free application, which can be used by doctor and the patient. It is, I think, called as Consult Corona. So that is a free for both patient and the doctor. They have started telling that we would like to make it free for everybody in India, basically. So that kind of applications are slowly being made available over a period of time. And many of these, young individuals who are serve the country, they are doing it. You may try it out. It may be available, I think, in the Play Video in the Android mobile, they are going to launch, I believe. So there are many applications available which may be free of cost. I would rather say don't use that. Use any application which a patient is easy to available, like maybe even WhatsApp, even Facebook, which they are already using it. I would rather say this telemedicine is written from a patient who is sitting in a rural area, switches on in WhatsApp, and he is able to call you through video, and he is able to talk to you. That is the motto of the telemedicine, which the guideline has been written. We have to reach. See, unfortunately, we talk about ISRO. We have reached planet Mars, but not our village. That is the saddest part. So this guideline is written again not to reach the Mars, to reach the urban area. So don't build any big app or hardware. A simple which a patient can click and say, yes, hello doctor, how are you? That should be the methodology. That's what even the Niti Aayog said. Make it simple to the patient. So it's not doctor-centric, it is patient-centric. I think we are, questions have been done. Can Dr. Prashant Bhatt do the valedictory, sir?
Yeah, there is one question. I think you can take this up before winding up. There are a lot of startup companies that is giving reports on health, but these companies are run by engineers basically and not doctors. So should there be any criteria or legal class for these companies? That is the question.
Basically the company for the application you are telling, telemedicine application.
Lot of startup companies with providing telehealth or maybe apps. Is there any legal guideline for these?
Yeah, let me be very clear about this. Unfortunately, the doctors cannot write these application. It has to be written by an engineer, CA. B, we being doctors have been very poor in adopting these, what we call it as technology. We are able to adopt the technology for our basic needs of social media, but we are not using it for patient because of our own apprehension. So that has to be broken because we are lagging behind in providing services in the technology. That is the biggest, not only in India, it is in across the world actually. So we have to go in par with the engineers, because engineers technology is going so fast, they are adapting, they're implementing, but doctors are not involving. Tomorrow if a patient comes, if an engineer comes and says that, sir, this is an application, this application is used for this, I will say I will not do that, I am busy in my patients. So if we are able to engage with them, so definitely it can be used. If you ask me now, there are more than 10 million applications available, both in iPhone or in Android. You take any this one, the health related application, it may be education, health education, it may be patient doctor, or patient's own patient, normal people's health monitoring, height, weight, data, gym, diet, all those. If you take it, there are many. Mood charting may be there, or maybe yoga app. There are many applications, they're done by many people. There may be there is no input from doctor at all. I am not going to blame the engineers. Engineers are going forward. Unfortunately, we are not picking up with them. That is our problem. I think we should start engaging them, because the technology is fast, but we doctors are lagging behind. It is problem with us, and we now has to move forward.
Okay, there is one more question. I think this is interesting. Are these guidelines only for the doctors as of now? Or a therapist or a registered dietitian, fitness expert are also come under this?
I just responded. This is only for the registered medical practitioners who are registered under various boards. It could be the Medical Council of India, or the CCIM, or the Homeopathy Council. So this is only for them. The therapists or paramedics are not involved in these guidelines at this point of time.
Okay, I think we are reaching the end of the session. All questions I think we have answered. I thank all the participants. I think there were over 100 participants from different parts of India. I hope our session.
I think this was limited to 100. I think the Zoom was limited to 100. It was not going up on. It was going between 92 and there was some issue with Zoom.
There was some issue with the number of participants. So only 100 people. I think if possible, we can put the link of this talk on YouTube and give the link to these doctors who could not attend. Once again, I thank all the doctors who have attended this webinar, and special thanks to Dr. Suresh Badamat, Dr. Sanjay, and Dr. Shivaram for your valuable time. I think this was a very useful session for doctors in giving the broad outlook of telemedicine guidelines. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.